Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. Eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. This week I'm going to be taking a look at an album by the Brendan Eder Ensemble, To Mix With Time. Now, To Mix With Time was floating around in my Bandcamp playlist at the end of 2020, and in my usual attempt to kind of clear off some of that stuff in November, I gave it a listen and immediately connected with it because it's this fascinating, great hybrid classical rock ensemble that puts out this music that I love it. I love the album very much. So much so that I took the time to try to reach out to Brendan Eder and maybe talk to him a little bit about his influences and where he's coming from. And because the internet is the way it is, he agreed. So I have a special guest for you today, Brendan Eder. It's very good to meet you, man.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, my pleasure, man. First of all, I think your album is brilliant.
Thanks so much, man.
And I have lots of questions, and I'm talking about To Mix With Time. First of all, I want to hear about your background a little bit, because I one of the reasons I connected with the album so early is I'm a Frank Zappa fan. So like the first time I listened through it, I'm like, this guy's nailing like early '70s Frank Zappa, Waka Jawaka era stuff, you know. Then come to find out later on that was really a big influence on you.
Yeah, but I don't really list Frank Zappa as like the biggest influence, but it's then again the music it's kind of like the first comparison you could make at the same time. Yeah. So it is kind of bizarre that how that kind of played out.
Your background, your first instrument, let's say, you play drums in your ensemble. That's your primary thing. Is that your training as a percussionist?
I have a broad sort of undergraduate education, so I did drums and studied some composition and also recording engineering. All those things I've actually been almost equally interested in for kind of since I started making music.
Yeah. And when did you start making music?
Typical like early teens, 11 or 12 or something. I was futzing around on piano and drum set, family members that had drums. So I'd mess around, and ultimately I was fortunate enough to, get my hands on my own drum kit.
Was just you were exposed to a lot of music, or did you have some formal training?
Yeah, in the my early childhood, just the typical thing, I did maybe a year, maybe 2 years of piano lessons my parents got me. Mm-hmm. So sort of the run-of-the-mill kind of thing. Really wasn't until high school that I actually think that I started taking music more seriously and, had some, enrolled in some jazz band, things like that in high school. Felt kind of deeply in love with music then.
Yeah.
So beforehand, I wasn't like a lot of these people that we see out there that, kind of just completely lived music and were immersed in their craft, from a really young age.
So, but you're playing some in jazz bands and stuff like that, playing some drums essentially. And what were you listening to in your personal habits like?
Yeah, you mentioned something about, having some influences. I think that, my dad did play a role at the time that I was really falling in love with music. Some of it was through old tapes that he had. He didn't necessarily play them that much anymore, but he has a musical background. And I think that played a role because I was literally just like digging through tapes as I was, becoming more and more interested in music, and there was just good stuff, lots of classical music mainly. So I was listening to, when I was really getting into things, early 20th century classical music and jazz. I didn't go too deep right away. I still haven't, but so those things, and then punk music, and I love like Fugazi. I also love Aphex Twin a lot. So all those things played a role.
It's interesting because I saw on your Twitter feed a little while back, you posted about, I think somebody said something, what's one band you could talk about for 30 minutes or something, and the first thing you said was Fugazi.
Hell yeah.
But it's interesting to me, like you've got this background with listening and being exposed to a lot of maybe classical music through recordings and stuff, but also personally being influenced with much more contemporary music sources, like Fugazi and Aphex Twin. And I particularly find the Aphex Twin influence interesting. Because I think I saw in another interview where you were like, I started listening to some more serious stuff, like Aphex Twin. And like, I thought you would feel like, like Varese, like Stravinsky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the best example, of course, is you have the cover of number 20 on that album. There's a lot of nuance to the way you did that arrangement.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, I think that one's pretty straightforward, but there's nuance in the performance and the bassoon solo. That's a solo, not a written solo. So Amber Wyman is a bassoonist who played on that, longtime member of the ensemble. She, I think, kind of really elevated that recording with her bassoon solo.
I didn't really know that bassoon solo was improv. So that's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, well, it's true though, because sometimes I write solos, so they could sound like they're improvised, but then they're written, or partially they're notated, and then it breaks out into half of it is maybe a genuine solo. But yeah, she did that one. I didn't write anything for her to solo.
It's in that Rite of Spring range too, where it's like it almost doesn't have a bassoon sound. It almost starts to sound like an English horn.
Yeah. She's damn good. That's why.
That's impressive. It's impressive, and it's also interesting. There's other parts of the album. I think there's another one, Riv or R-I-V.
Riv, yeah.
Riv.
I call it Riv.
Where I think there's a saxophone solo in that one. Is there an improvised saxophone solo in that, or is that one written out too?
Yeah. At the end, we break out into this jam that's it's quoting On the Corner, the Miles Davis piece. The groove from that. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh yeah.
And then he quotes. I have him quote the melody, and then he goes ham and does a solo. That one's got a Stravinsky quote on it too. That one quotes Petrushka.
Clearly, lots of it is written out. I got your CD. You sent it to me, and it came with a nice little doodle on the front with like a penguin.
Yeah.
And then it was printed on some sheet music. I'm like, oh cool. He sent some sheet music, and I looked at it. I'm like, wait, this is his sheet music.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, man. I really go for it. I really notate the shit out of my music. It's kind of the only way to pull it off without really having people kind of co-writing and being regular members of the band anyway. I really got to just, pencil it on paper and then leave some room where I can take risks and where the music can really truly benefit from people coming up with their own ideas. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the most part, I'd say it's through composed.
Some instruments improv naturally a little bit differently than others.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in Soft Shine Hot, there's a track right beforehand, you've got a bassoon solo in there. Now, that one sounds to me kind of like an improvised solo. Was that one improvised?
Yes. So, Soft Shine Hot, yeah. Towards the end, I wrote this sort of section that we repeated, and when we do it live, we sort of, if we even rehearse, it's like, okay, well, you do one time, and then you do two times through, and then we'll just play the actual notes and end it.
Yeah.
So the recording, Soft Shine Hot, has another genuine bassoon solo. That's a different bassoonist, actually.
The difference between letting a bassoon player rip and letting a saxophone rip.
Totally different. You're going to get some
totally
results.
Different aesthetic. I saw you have a video for in the Spirit of, that first track. In that video, you're just following the score. And I was really impressed with, because I also had played some bass. And so I was really impressed with the bass line because it sounds so natural. It sounds like something that a bass player would just jam.
Yeah, I have a bass, so I kind of test things out, make sure it's playable. I have to do that with everything, really. But the bass line is like, okay, this is, you could play this all day, no problem.
One of the things I like about a lot of your compositions is that the easy thing to do would just be to write a clever melody and then harmonize it. And you don't do that. You've got a lot of parts and layers going on in what you have going on.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. And coming from a band director, that makes a lot of sense because, with a lot of band music, big band music, things like that, you're harmonizing the lead line. And it sounds fucking awesome. I never learned how to do that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Until maybe like 2 days ago. I kind of knew, but I haven't in practice done that. So I haven't utilized it with the ensemble much. Maybe sometimes I'll harmonize a run, or a line, sort of in rhythmically in unison, I guess you would call it. But I do this interwoven kind of everything's its own line, which probably drives some people crazy that are used, like maybe you.
Not really. I think it's interesting to be honest. I mean, you do have some straightforward melodies in there, and that's fine. If it was all just that the whole time, it'd be a little trickier. But you're very you're good about having something that you can grab onto, and then maybe having things that are a little bit more esoteric, I say esoteric like not that it's not esoteric hard to catch on to, just not straightforward. Here's the melody ham-fisted.
Yeah, even if it's like getting kind of wacky. I mean, there's some other pieces I've written that are more out there, but in general, I feel like I kind of go for like this groove-based thing, and that makes kind of any idea more accessible. You can still latch on.
You have some pieces on here that like border on being almost ambient.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're, in my opinion anyway, they're not really ethereal enough to be ambient. They're more just like texture,
Yeah. I think you're right, yeah. The Aphex Twin cover is pretty ambient, obviously, but like there's some other stuff in there that's it's sort of ambient classical or something. But it's not like you can just space out and keep listening to it and like nothing's going on. It's like it's a little too much to be ambient, right?
Yeah. I think though, and getting back to the Aphex Twin cover, it comes from that ambient line that he was doing, but I think that arrangement brings out the inherent melodies that are in that. It feels less ambient to me in the arrangement that you have.
Yeah, you're right.
It's what it feels like. I listened to the original version, and it feels more like the wallpaper music, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But that's the intent behind a lot of ambient music. It's supposed to be kind of like, the furniture music, or whatever they want to call it.
Eric Satie.
Furniture
music. He coined that, Yeah, totally.
On the other hand, a lot of your other stuff, especially the kind of more funky, the contrasting pieces, have a real kind of playful nature to it that's great. I mean, I sat here and just like wrote out adjective after adjective. It's like playful, angular. It has a kind of a positive feel to it that I think is kind of missing in some ways. That's what I think is really refreshing about it.
Man, thanks.
Yeah,
I just kind of end up that way a lot of the time. Maybe no matter what I'm going through in my own personal life, it's a lot of the music just kind of I end up writing and putting down as kind of just funky, whimsical.
That's it. Whimsical
thing. Yeah. Still not quite sure why that is, but Who knows?
It's an expression of you for sure, I think. It's clearly like has its roots in some classical, I hate to say classical, it's not really the right word, chamber orchestral type music, you know. But then
some type of music like that, yeah. I don't know either.
So I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of that crossover, the blending of the dissolution of genres, really.
Dissolution of genres, is that what we said?
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
So you have a new project coming out, and is this with the ensemble?
It's actually not. There's one player in it that has played with ensemble a lot. It's called Cape Cod Cottage. It's a concept album about a dentist named Edward Blankman who wrote elegant minimalist jazz in obscurity.
This is a real person?
No, I created Edward Blankman and his story. The concept album also has, it's going to be on gatefold vinyl, which I'm very excited about. It's got pictures of the session, but we did them in a way so that, nothing could be dated to current times. And so down to the microphones or the license plates on the car in the background.
And that's going to be a full release that's coming out when?
Cape Cod caught it out on September 10th, this summer.
Cool. I'm really happy to have had a chance to talk to you about this.
Dude, likewise. I really liked the videos you put up and the review you put up. It's really, really awesome.
Well, thanks, man. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, hit me up for anything, man. Really appreciate it.
Will do. All right, thank you so much, man.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
You know, we may not have really gotten to the bottom of why it is exactly that Frank Zappa and Brendan Eder kind of have some similarities in their style, but what I can say that I've gotten out of this is that there's this sort of overlap that's similar. Frank Zappa, his original style came from an overlap between 20th century classical music and the blues. And it feels like Brendan Eder has a similar overlap with 20th century music, classical and jazz, but with more chaotic aspects of like Aphex Twin and maybe the more countercultural attitude of Fugazi. So I think that there's a lot of stuff going on with the Brendan Eder Ensemble that's great, and I'm very, very thankful I got a chance to hang out with them and talk to them this evening. There's also going to be an extended version of this video where you talk a little bit more in depth about some other stuff. So if you want to know when that's going to be released, please like and subscribe and share the video out with your friends. Also, follow me over on Spotify. I'll be putting a Brendan Eder Ensemble track up on the playlist. And keep your eyes open. Until then, I'll catch you on the flip side.